minsan kasi ang hirap ito yung mahirap i-explain, eh. Sasabihin nila, tubig, karapatan, dapat may access tayong lahat. How do you reconcile that with the need to regulate, and therefore once nag-regulate ka, one form of regulation would be pricing, then it will have an effect on equity and access to water?
Yun yung, ito mahihirap siyang tanong because I recognize that as soon as you attach a price to water, madaming aalma. Isipin nyo na lang yung Metro Manila, for example, many years ago, after ng pagpasok ng private sector, no, privatize siya ng MWSS, madaming umalma, bakit kami magbabayad? Ganyan. Pero kung titignan nyo yung definition ng UN on the human right to water and sanitation, hindi niya sinasabing tubig ay libre. Ang sinasabi ng human right to water and sanitation is affordability. So you can attach a price, but it has to be affordable. And ang maganda sa Pilipinas, meron tayong standards for making this affordable. For example, a clear policy lever is dapat yung presyo ng tubig hindi lalagpas sa 5% na household income of the poorest households in the municipality. So meron tayong ganong checks on fairness. Notwithstanding, kailangan pa rin may presyo ang tubig kasi merong management and service costs na nakaakibat yung pagdadala ng tubig to where it is most needed. For example, for irrigation, there has to be infrastructure, irrigation canals, proper ways of opening the gate, meron tayong mga operations and maintenance involved. And same thing for water supply. So ang mahirap na balancing act for any regulator, for any water service provider is, yes, I'm providing water, but is this affordable? On the domestic and municipal side, may paraan tayo to subsidize. And this is where I feel it's a missed opportunity to do cross subsidies from industry to agriculture. Tingnan natin sa municipal side. And on the municipal side, ang the idea is kapag mas malaki yung konsumo mo ng tubig, mas malaki yung per cubic meter na babayaran mo. So ibig sabihin, yung mga mas konti yung ginagamit ng tubig, sila din yung mga lifeline rate na tinatawag natin. Sila yung talagang subsidized by these big users, usually richer families and households and industry. But we can apply that same logic for agriculture kasi ang dami nating smallholder farmers na ako namang nangangailangan ng tulong ng gobyerno. But it's not outright subsidy that makes sense. Kasi when you subsidize irrigation, you're subsidizing it for all, even for the rich farming land-owning families and rich industries. But if you find a way para ma-subsidize ng big water agricultural consumers on an industrial scale, yung ating smallholder farmers, yun sana yung mas targeted na subsidy method.
Alam mo yung isa pang nakaka-frustrate dyan, yung napaka-limited ng capacity for water monitoring. At yung evaluation in terms of yung impact ng isang industriya halimbawa sa water supply. Naalala ko kasi, when we tried to evaluate yung impact ng isang malaking mining, OceanaGold, sa Nueva Vizcaya, kasi nagrereklamo ang mga farmers and daw, para po sa kaalaman ng lahat, ang mining, alam naman ng mga regular dito na favorite topic ko yung mining. Ang mining, mataas ang demand sa tubig. And now, malaking issue yan kasi nga ngayon binebenta natin yung bansa natin bilang primary location para mag-supply ng minerals for transition to green energy. But hindi lang dapat ini-evaluate yung potential income na gagawin or dadalhin sa atin ng mining sa Pilipinas. We must evaluate also ano yung potential impact nito sa atin. Kasama na yung water stress, diba? Yun nga yung, alam mo, nung sa tinry namin, we're looking for data. May kasama kong geologist and when we were doing that study, alam mo, walang report kung gaano karami ang water extraction na ginagawa ng industry. And then we had to estimate kung paano yung supply, di ba, yung rainfall, ganyan. So, hinanap pa ata naman yung mga datos galing sa Japan, ng mga report ng rainfall sa atin, just to estimate yung supply and demand. And based on our rough estimate, talagang ang malaki yung naging contribution ng utilization nag-overuse sila kasi usually magse-set ang government ng limits, 'di ba? Ito na yung pwede niyong gamitin. So may mga certain times na nag-overuse sila ng water at tumutugma yung overuse ng water ng mining dun sa pagke-claim ng mga communities na nawawalan sila ng supply ng tubig hanggang sa gripo. 'Di ba? Pero yun ang problema natin kasi sa pagko-costing niyan, hindi lang yung nagbabayad pa sila per ano bang measurement, cubic ng tubig, cubic meter na in-extract nila. But kung hindi proper ang monitoring, hindi naman natin na-account yung cost nito at the household level. So imagine, 'di ba, kung wala ng tubig at the household level, yung mga nanay kailangan lumabas. 'Di ba? Kailangan mag-igib kasi walang tubig sa gripo. So that should be included as cost for limiting the access of water, 'di ba? So from your perspective, kung papunta na tayo at ang mundo dito sa water bankruptcy, ano yung mga potential na negative effects nito sa atin bilang household level, pati na rin yung sa inequality sa access ng tubig?
Madami ang magiging impact. Alam mo, Prof, ang matunog kasi na oil is the engine of economic growth. Yun lagi di ba? Pinag-aawayan ng oil di ba? Countries go to war to have access to oil. But I always think that water is the invisible engine. It's not as appreciated as oil. Pero kung tutuusin, water is the very foundation of every comfort, every convenience in the civilized world. Toilet? That's because of water. Good food that is delivered to you in the supermarket, that's because we have water. Wala tayong masyadong sakit, it's because we can wash our hands and take a bath every day. These are things that we take for granted. So imagine if our water systems fail, sunod-sunod, cascading effect yung magiging implication yan sa atin. Let's look at the ways. Number one, food security. No water, walang magagamit ang mga magsasaka, fisher folk, and livestock farmers to produce. And therefore, food prices will increase. Or, mag-aangkat tayo, same impact. Magkakaroon tayo ng increased food prices. And of course, increased food prices has a lot of other knock-on effects, especially sa mga mas mahihirap who are more exposed to increases in food pricing. Pangalawa, job security. Agriculture, especially in the Philippines, medyo malaki-laki pa rin yung portion of our workforce who are involved in agricultural jobs. And so water failure can put many of these jobs at risk. And farming as a skill, especially in the Philippines, the nature is mahirap i-shift yung ating agricultural workforce into other kinds of labor. Kasi your skills are very suited for agriculture, or hindi mo kayang ilipat kaagad yung mga tao natin into other forms. Naku, pusa ko po yan, pasensya na. Other forms of economic practice. So job security is at risk. Hindi masyadong relevant sa atin, but in other parts of the world, climate-induced migration is also a problem. But it is possible for our smaller islands, lalo na sa pag-angat ng sea level rise, countries who are considered fragile in the Pacific, in the Caribbeans, they're called small island developing states. Imagine your entire country being at risk of being wiped off the map. And we always joke about ilang islands meron ng Pilipinas, 7,600 na yata ngayon. Ilan kaya dyan yung mawawala if we have a significant sea level rise? And how about the communities who live there? Naisip din natin dapat yun. But one thing that really alarms me also na wala pa tayong masyadong pag-intindi is public health risk. Water is so important to public health. Meron tayong branch of water management called WASH, Water, Sanitation, and Health and Hygiene. Nakita natin during the pandemic how important it is to have not just running water to wash our hands, but also proper, safely managed toilets. And sino ba yung mga communities who are at risk of not having access to safely managed water and safely managed sanitation. It's the poor. It's those living in informal settlements, yung mga kinalimutan ng lipunan. But in a public health emergency situation and crisis, sila yung not only the first but also the worst hit. And so, ang dami, nakasalalay ng lahat ng ito and even more to proper management of water.
So, given yung mga in-enumerate mo, biglang parang hirap no? Ang dami niyan, if you're in government or if you're the president, para matuwa naman yung mga nasa comment section natin, if you're the president at na kinakaharap natin tong problema ng water, no? Kasi naalala ko itong may question si Maria. Sabi niya, wala pa po bang proposal to capture rainwater, halimbawa, into reservoir in anticipation of water bankruptcy? So, what do you think should be the priority policies ng government? Naalala ko rin kasi biglang a few weeks ago, na-realize ng government na kailangan nating mag-catch up sa AI at saka sa BPO sector, and therefore biglang lang na-realize kailangan natin mag-marketing and mag-invite ng investment in those sectors. But then I read somewhere, hindi ko lang maalala kung saan ko nabasa, that Malaysia and other countries like both Malaysia and Thailand nagkakaroon na ng problem with their water supply kasi katulad ng binanggit ni Shalmer, AI, taas ng water requirement for data centers in addition to high energy requirements. So in other countries where saan nag-locate itong mga data centers na to, yan yung nagiging problem nila, nagkakaroon na sila ng problema sa water supply. So, biglang ang hirap ng tanong sa'yo, no? Kung ikaw yung presidente, palagi mo ba iniisip yan ng presidente? Ganito yung may urgency in addressing a water problem in the Philippines. What would be your top 3 policy priorities?
Una-una, and I will sound like a broken record, pass the Department of Water Resources. Nung umpisa, I have to say, medyo skeptic din ako na parang, Department of Water, okay naman tayo, ganyan. But being in the industry for 17 years and seeing how much of the failure is not even infrastructure. No, it's not even the lack of water, the quantity. Hindi siya water scarcity in some areas. It's water bankruptcy is a management problem. At the moment we see that it is a management problem, ang una-una natin gagawin is to clean the house. Clean up house, get everybody lined up in a proper order, klaro kung sino ang may mandato nito, klaro kung sino ang gagawa ng which roles, then management becomes easier and then we can enact deeper reforms. So that's the most important. Madami sa mga, sinusubaybayan ko din kasi yung pag-usad nung bill, and madaming consultations across many stakeholders. I think all of those inputs are really valuable.
Mm-mm.
It's taking shape. It's taking shape in a way na
kailang Congress na ba tong Department of Water natin?
It's taking shape pero hindi pa rin makausad. So if I were president, though I would not want to be one, if I were president, yun ang uunahin natin. Department of Water or Department of Water Resources. I don't know what the name is, but the mandate has to be clear.
Mm-mm.
The second
So this
is,
has to be certified as urgent, diba?
It has to be certified as urgent kasi yun nga, as I explained earlier, dami nakasalalay
At saka pasok na rin dyan yung hindi lang yung overall water demand and supply management natin dito sa Pilipinas. Kung hindi pati yung mga na-encounter, nakailang episodes rin ako tungkol dyan sa supply ng mga water at saka regulatory body at the local level diba? Yung problems with contractors, prime water, private provision, oversight, etc. Lahat po na yan ay pasok at maayos sana. Or at least ma-attempt ma-consolidate yung framework ng policy kung magkaroon tayo ng Department of Water.
Yeah. I completely agree. Parang tingin ko sa usapin naman ng private sector participation, hindi siya nangangahulugang masama kaagad. Parang naintindihan ko, especially in water, kung bakit gusto natin siyang gawing public enterprise. People say it's a public good. in economics terms, alam natin ang public good is different from a social good. Pero water is so important and foundational na ayaw nating ipamigay yung control nito sa private sector.
Mm.
But look at it this way. Sa report ng ADB, the estimate for investment needs in the water sector is $4 trillion. And we are only covering, based on current budgets, 40% of that in the investment needs.
Mm.
At hindi mo mapilit ang mga gobyerno to spend more because they are contending with so much other things.
Mm.
Education, even military spending, health, ang daming ibang priorities. So, what our governments are telling us is, ito na yun, ito na yung kaya namin. So that's why we need help. And that's where private sector comes in. And private sector can be a fantastic ally. We've seen many examples kung saan nagkakaroon ng magandang public-private partnership. But it has to be a partnership. Hindi pwedeng nakakalamang yung isa. Hindi pwedeng pinagkakakitaan tayo ng isa. Hindi pwedeng pinangako lang nagaganda yung tubig natin, pero ang lalabas, hindi
Kulay
maganda yung
brown.
So, it erodes the trust of the public, unfortunately. Kasi ako na nga itong nagbabayad ng tubig, tinaasan nyo yung presyo ng tubig ko, pero hindi pa rin maayos yung serbisyo. This kind of erosion of trust, naiintindihan ko kung bakit hindi kampante ang mga tao kapag sinasabi, uy, may papasok na private dito, or manghihimasok ang ganitong kumpanya. Ayusin muna natin. Let's rebuild that trust. And it has to be a real partnership between public and private kung doon man tayo pupunta.
At saka napaka-importante siguro niyan yung understanding ng oversight. Kasi nakita ko yung pattern sa maraming local governments that they entered into a contract, they have water district. Yung water district natin ay GOCC at the municipal or city level. May oversight po dyan yung mga LGUs, and therefore, pwede kayong mag-demand ng accountability at the local level. Ito yung concept palagi accountability. If they're not delivering yung contract na naka-atas sa kanila yung expectation sa content ng contract, pwede nyo pong i-terminate yun. 'Di ba? Kasi parang hirap na hirap in terms of paano ba natin to gagawin? Pinasa natin yung responsibilidad sa private sector. Kaya importante yung monitoring. Ano ba yung pinapagawa nyo sa kanila kapag hindi na-deliver? Pwede nyo pong i-terminate yung kontrata na yan para masigurado na na-deliver yung kailangan ng mga communities with respect to water management. At saka, yun nga siguro yung pwede nating i-explain, no? Like for example, yung water management at the municipal level, ano yung scope niyan? Hindi lang naman yan pagsigurado na may water sa gripo. Di ba kasama din dapat dyan yung piping? Kasama din, given that you worked with Maynilad, piping, pati yung treatment of water. Can you discuss it with us?
So ang typical na model in the Philippines and in many other countries is meron tayong entity. It's usually at utility or dito tawag natin water district. Nung unang panahon talaga, kalamang tagal na. In the 70s, it was called NAWASA, National Water Authority, Water Supply Authority. Ang NAWASA na ito, naging water districts. And so most municipalities and cities are covered by a water district. Sila yung GOCC, they're quasi-government entities, quasi-corporate entities, pero government pa rin yan. Merong oversight, sabi mga prof, ang LGU sa kanilang mga water district. In fact, ang mayor ang nag-a-appoint ng board of directors. So kung ayaw natin yung patakbo ng water district, at mga naging decision nila, puntahan natin si mayor, demand accountability. So that's one model. The other model is sa mga bayan na wala pang water district, and these are usually the smaller municipalities, sakop ng LGU yung ating waterworks. So ang tawag natin dyan is municipal waterworks. It's a unit within the LGU, usually the engineering office. And within the engineering office, sakop nila anywhere from buildings, roads, and bridges, solid waste, pati tubig. So it becomes a small part of the engineering office's function. Kaya kung minsan hindi natutugunan or nabibigyang attention yung tubig kasi mapakaliit lang yan na responsibility among everything else that the municipal engineering office has to do. So that's another model. Both of those are government, public models. A third model can be a private entity. Ang isang pribadong entity, the likes of, for example, Balibago Waterworks, meron siyang municipal franchises. And these are franchises that they got from the government, and they submit their to the they submit regulation to the NWRB. So si NWRB yung may patakaran in terms of tariff setting. So they're also regulated both by the LGU and by NWRB. So yun yung mga typical models. Now, nung pumasok itong public-private partnerships, this is when an entity like a water district enters into a PPP contract with a private entity like Prime Water, Manila Water, Metro Pacific Water, madami po. And they have to define kung ano yung scope ng partnership. Prime Water, for example, does everything, takes over the entire operations of the water district. May ibang model naman na ang public-private partnership lang nila, ang sakop lang nito source only. So pag-usapan nila, wala kayong pakialam sa distribution na, amin pa rin to, sabi ng water district. Pero we want you to develop a new water source. It's called bulk water supply. And here, pwedeng co-owner din yung water district doon sa joint venture company specific to bulk water supply. So madaming models na ngayon ng public-private partnerships. And nung nag-uumpisa nga ako, Prof, 2009, I was hired in Manila to do PPPs. So for me, I've really seen the journey of PPPs in the Philippines na paisa-isa, dalawa muna, hindi pa klaro yung rules of PPP engagement, JVs, bago lahat yan, BOT, concessionaire model ng Maynilad ba gagawin natin sa water districts? And now, lumubo na yung PPP space because water districts are in need of support. I think that's the bottom line. Hindi naman papasok ang isang water district or LGU in a PPP if they don't feel that there is a strong need for it. Kasi kulang sila ng capital expenditures, kulang sila ng expertise, they need technology, and so on and so forth. But it is the responsibility of citizens, especially consumers po tayong lahat, nagbabayad tayo ng tubig, nagbabayad tayo ng buwis, to make sure na yung kontrata, yung scope, yung pricing, the commercial agreements ay nababantayan.